NFL players, Mike Tomczak, along with my dear friend, incredible linebacker, special teams, great Notre Dame and high school athlete, Frank Stamps, joining us today on the Dog Pound, in the Dog Pound, found on any of your listening devices at alumnimedia.com. We are the number one podcast in the alumni media space, and we can't wait for you guys to tune in and listen to us. Again, Mike Tomczak, Frank Stamps. Frank, how you doing today?
Yeah, no, I'm doing great. It's been a rugged last couple of hours. 5 o'clock yesterday afternoon. Well, I'll back up. Sunday, we go down to Columbus, see our son. He's a senior at Ohio State. Spend the entire day down there. Rain on the way down, snowstorm. Came back, watched the first game, the Ravens game, and then came back. Then yesterday, about 5 o'clock, my wife goes downstairs and says, "Uh-oh, we got an issue." I'm like, whoa, what? Is everybody okay? First thing is, we can deal with anything as long as everybody's okay. So, even that we can do it. She goes, we have flooding. The basement flooded.
Oh,
So I was like, oh shit. I called a buddy of mine. And he's a freaking Mr. Fix It. He can do anything. And he came over. The sump pump failed. And with all that rain, it put about an inch across the entire basement. Our basement is finished. And he came over 2 hours late. We go to Lowe's. 2 hours later, the sump pump's going. It's starting to drain. So that's good. But I had plans today. I was coming over to South Bend, to the South Bend Distillery, working with a guy and some of the guys from the '88 National Championship team, the last champions at Notre Dame, wants to do a signature bourbon bottle. And he's got a proprietary way of making bourbon now that's better, faster, more productive. And wants to put some names on it. And I said, man, I'd love to come over and kick the tires. And, I drove over about 10 o'clock, got there at 2. We spent an hour together, got in the car, and now I'm driving back. So and tomorrow I'm ripping the carpet up. So it's going to be a long 72 hours for me. So to answer your question, that's how I'm doing. Listen, man, I'm running on adrenaline. How are you doing?
I love it. That's the great thing about evolution, right? Every day, life just gets in the way. And if it's not one thing, if it's not helping somebody out, I'm visiting a dear friend in the hospital. I've been here off and on for the last 5 days, spending time with him and his family. And, what a blessing that is. But on the flip side,
now he's got, and you shared with me who it is, and he's got a sports background, right? I mean, he officiated games when I was in high school.
Yeah. My dear friend, Bob Mansfield. Bob Mansfield's in the Hall of Fame for high school officiating and basketball. I believe he had the Akron St. Vincent St. Mary's game where you were a star athlete. I don't know what number you wore in high school, but he said you were pretty elite.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what number I was in the program. You know the rest of this saying number one, in your heart, baby.
Right. Yeah. The great thing about this, Frank, is it's raw and unfiltered, and usually we have Leroy Horde and Eric Metcalf do a wonderful job, in this little huddle that we have.
Here's the deal.
A lot of our listeners got in tune with the mantra from Leroy of "Here's the deal," and then you had to wait 5 minutes before his answer was complete. But as I digress, the reality of this, Frank, you have a responsibility. To your wife, to your family. Here you go to Columbus, spend time with Mason, your dear son, and you come back to the house. I've had that situation, and water is if the Detroit Lions drank more water in the second half, they might have had more success, right? They might have had more success because they could have flooded that lead of 21 points going into halftime, and unfortunately, they got flooded in the second half. And they weren't able to capitalize on what they did in the first half. But back to your situation, right. Is there anything I could do to help out? Is there anything I got mops? I got restoration.
Now you're a great friend. Thanks for asking.
Okay.
But sticking with that water theme, I'm going to go also with the Lions, and they needed it to be sub 32 degrees there because that would have prevented the meltdown, the freaking meltdown that took place in the second half. I absolutely couldn't believe what was playing out before my eyes in that second half. Have you ever seen anything like that?
I've experienced it as a player, in college, in the NFL as well. You're feeling good. I've been in, 31-3, 31-10 leads on both sides, a deficit and also an advantage. And you're feeling pretty good about yourself when you have a 21 point lead going into halftime. You kind of get giddy and greedy in the sideline. You're looking at your teammates saying, man, 30 minutes, man, we're that close to the Super Bowl. And I don't know if the travel arrangement guy or the ticket guy came into the locker room at halftime and started spouting off how many tickets you need, how many rooms do you need. But by and large, Frank, the reality is I think the better team won. We've been accustomed to a 60-minute game, and the teams that perform well for 60 minutes are the ones that end up winning and don't beat themselves like we witnessed on Sunday. Would you agree?
Well, I probably, yeah, if they played 10 times, San Francisco would win 6, maybe 7 times. If the old saying, you don't have to be better than them, just better than them that day. And you talk about a tale of two halves. Detroit was better than them in the first half. And then in the second half, we all know San Francisco certainly was better than Detroit. But, and I've been on, comebacks. I mean, when I say, I've never seen anything like it, it just, I've been, we played on a Sunday night in Buffalo one time, and Kelly's not playing. And Frank Reich is the backup, and he gets to start. And we're winning probably 17 points going into the fourth quarter. We're winning, and they came back and beat us. And Frank Reich, that wasn't the first time that, he's made a comeback. He was great at that. But in order for a team, and looking at it, in order for a team to come back like that, San Francisco, everything, I don't say everything's got to go their way, but it did. How about the ball that bounced off the receiver's helmet or the defender's helmet, into the receiver's hands, and ended up at the 3 or 4 yard line. The fumble, in about 25, 30 yard line by San Francisco that led to a Lions, or I'm sorry, I don't know if it led to a San Francisco score, but I think it did. Right. Dan Campbell, and I'll tell you what, analytics, I know you can't argue with the computer, but I'm going to. When you've got points on the board, and to take it, and I'm not, to take a risk and say, okay, well, analytics tell me that I've got a 70% chance to win. Well, you've got to put it this way. You've got a 95% chance to put points on the board. I just don't understand how you don't put points on the board.
And you'll never understand until you're in that situation. I've been around the game, collegiately, and we do have an analytics. I run some of the analytics myself, but I keep the analytics card with me on the sideline. But I rarely refer to it because I have a feel for the game. Right, I'm supposed to communicate with our head coach and our offensive and defensive coordinators about going forward, or the other team's going to go for it on fourth down. But in true reality, as the game plays out, as my dear friend Jim Tressel I talked to this week, who's a huge Browns fan, as you know, he said, correct me if I'm wrong, when you kick a field goal, is that an opportunity to score points? And he was a master at that at Ohio State, right? He was a field possession guy. He always took points. Rarely did he go for it on fourth down. And to his explanation, he said sometimes these coaches outthink themselves instead of keeping it simple. And they have the whole offseason to think about that, Frank. And it's not just this game. One of the most important games in Dan Campbell's career. He's going to think about this, and hopefully he grows from it and they can overcome. But, when you're in those situations, I don't care what analytics say. It's the feel of the game, correct?
Well, yeah. Campbell, I think, fell victim to analytics. And it wasn't just in that moment. I think he, and it's hard to, argue. If I'm arguing with Dan Campbell, he's going to say, well, you know what? We're going to stay with what got us there. And he was the one, throughout the season. I think I heard on the broadcast that, he was the coach that went for it the most on fourth down. He was the one that went for, had the most success using analytics. So he's going to say to himself, well, why not? Why not now? Let's stay true to who we are as a team. Let's stay consistent. Let's stay with what got us here. But somehow it's a game, and it's not a I don't know. They're going to say it's not a science. I mean, forget about the probability. I guess going back to it, you've got a 95% chance. I'll throw in there, how many field goals get missed. You got 95% chance to have 3 points versus a 70% chance to get a first down. And I'm just saying all day long, go with the 95, like you said, like Tressel's saying, and supporting, what I'm trying to say here is take the points all day long. And unfortunately, because I was rooting my ass off for the Lions. But and I thought Purdy played a great second half. And you're talking about a good team. Yeah, they got a great team. I love that defensive line. And they're aggressive. They're well coached. And damn, if that defense didn't come to play in the second half, which gave San Francisco's offense a chance to win that game. I mean, Detroit scores that late touchdown, really, that only helped me in covering with the 7.5 points. Thank you very much, Goff. But really, it didn't mean anything. I mean, ultimately, it didn't mean anything. I mean, it was just ridiculous. What was it? The final tally: 27 points in the second half, something like that.
27 by San Francisco, 7 by Detroit.
I mean, so I mean, Detroit comes out on fire. I mean, it just came out on fire. I don't know. You got my analysis of that game. What's your takeaway in that game from start to finish?
Well, from start to finish, obviously, when Detroit gets the ball first, they script, their first 10 plays like most teams do, and they execute it to perfection. I mean, the line of scrimmage was getting moved in the first half. The runners were running, violently, extra effort. Goff was on track, with the play action passes, and Laporta, their rookie tight end, was dominant, early and often in the game. And they didn't really have any explosive plays, but they were just getting first downs, time of possession, And I've always been with the mindset that first downs lead to touchdowns. And we saw that for 30 minutes in the first half, except for right before halftime, Frank. Right before halftime, they had an opportunity to kick a field goal, right? I think they were stopped short on a fourth down call on a 3-yard line. And San Francisco took over, and
right.
The half ended. But, it's very few times do you get an opportunity to be in a championship game, one game away from getting to the Super Bowl. And you work hard, in the off season. You work hard in August, and you get ready for the season in September. And every team in America, in the NFL, is optimistic that their team's going to make it to the final two for the Super Bowl. And Detroit, they were captured the hearts of America. With all the 60-year history of not making it to winning a playoff game, late in the year and all that stuff. And, from start to finish, I thought they were well in control of the game. They were playing at their pace and their tempo, but someone flipped a switch at halftime, right? I mean, it's you've been in those locker rooms where it's a pretty docile if you're down 21 points, and pretty emotional if you're up 21 points. You might go to the bathroom, check your hair a little bit, put some more eye black on, or change your uniform, your underneath clothing. When you get some time at halftime. But you know, they were asking after the game what was said in the locker room at halftime in the San Francisco locker room. Just do your job.
Right.
Right. Guys were taking plays off. Guys were making business decisions on how to tackle or how not to tackle. And I just think that, coaches always say that you can't just go out there and flip a switch. You can't just throw your helmet on the field and expect the other team to lay down. You have to earn it every play. Right. And I don't know the possessions, but the time of possession in the second half was fully in favor of San Francisco. And, I love the comeback. I absolutely love the comeback. And it kept my attention. We lived this game, right? We lived this game for many years of our life as professionals, but as outsiders now, you're trying to put a finger on it and see what was the cause of this, the cause and effect. And, they were completely deflated in the second half.
Yeah. No, they just, I don't know if you call it the breaks, but San Francisco certainly outplayed Detroit. And they got, the ball bounced their way a few times, and I point to that ball that bounced off the defenders, and he's defending well. It just bounces off. I mean, the thing I thought of right away was the immaculate reception by Franco Harris. Just crazy. I actually thought the guy scored a touchdown, but they said he was down by contact. Talking about crazy. Browns Nation, you're listening to In the Dog Pound with your host, Mike Tomczak, Frank Stams. Also, Eric Metcalf, Leroy Hood can't join us tonight. They're on a date. We're talking Browns football, playoff football now, reviewing and the championship games, previewing the Super Bowl. In the Dog Pounds, found everywhere where you find your favorite dog poundcast. Alumnimedia.com is the website, raw and unfiltered, giving it to you straight from the locker room. But a team, looking at that AFC championship game. Baltimore, you talk about it. I thought the defense in the second, I don't know what to say about Baltimore, but their thing is, they couldn't get out of their own way. I mean, they wanted to come in, bully the other team. At times they were thuggish, and it just what's the
is it thuggish? Is it thuggish or undisciplined, or a combination?
Well, I think it's undisciplined, but I think it's both. I think they were undisciplined thugs.
Mike McDonald, defensive coordinator. McDonald, the defensive coordinator for Baltimore. You were referencing him, I believe.
No, I was going to say I was going to flip it to what they were doing defense. Kansas City was doing defensively.
Spagnuolo.
That's right. It just blitzing, and Lamar. Lamar couldn't handle it. Lamar looked bad. Lamar, his vision downfield was bad. His accuracy was bad. They contained him in the run. That he just did not engineer that offense the way they needed it to do. Maybe it was because the receivers weren't separating versus man-to-man coverage. The offensive line wasn't protecting him. He got more pressure than he was used to, but they made that offense look bad. And for the life of me, I watched that first series. I can't understand why they just completely abandoned the run. I mean, they ran that first series. They answered Kansas City's first score. In high fashion. I went and put some more on Baltimore after I saw that. I mean, the way they were able to run that, wow. I mean, and then they just completely abandoned it. the rest of the game. And you talk about a head scratcher.
Yeah, and you might as well just point the blame at John Harbaugh too, because he's the voice of reason. He's been a long tenured coach. He's gotten his team to this position in the past, and for you to bend in what you do best, it is a head scratcher for sure. And I felt as if there was a line of communication that was lost during the course of that game, and they were still one possession away from being in the game, right? No matter how long the game went, it was still a one possession game,
right?
All the way
right.
all the way till the end. And I went into that game, Frank. I wanted to talk to you about this. I love greatness, individual, team greatness, and people were tired of seeing Kansas City, year after year in the AFC Championship. But I applaud it. I applauded it when Brady was doing his thing. I applauded it when Brett Favre was doing his thing. When Fran Tarkenton took the Minnesota Vikings to 4 Super Bowls. Jim Kelly took the team to 4 Super Bowls. The Michael Jordan era in Chicago. The Boston Bruins with their hockey team. The Boston Celtics with their basketball team. And it just seems to me when I sit there and scratch my head and think, why do people hate? Why do people dislike success? It's because they never experienced it themselves, because for a fact how hard it is to repeat game in and week out, or championship year in and year out. Thoughts on dealing with greatness? Right?
Well, my problem with Mahomes, and where can you hear me?
Yes.
My problem. Can you hear me? My problem
Yes.
with Mahomes is where I soured on him is when he came out and apologized for his behavior when he complained about that offsides. And I think they were playing Buffalo, and the play ended up with the offsides. They called the guy called. The side judge called the offsides. Yeah. The play continued, ended up scoring a touchdown. Would have been, I think, the game winner for Kansas City over Buffalo. And Mahomes just went ballistic. He went ballistic on a black and white call. Felt like he should get a warning. You know what? And so I said after that on the podcast, he had to get a Gerber commercial along with all his other commercials, because I thought he acted like a baby. Because for a guy that benefits more than anybody else in the NFL from the officiating, he had the nerve to act like that. And he recognized it a couple of days later. So I think that's what kind of sours people on it. And of course, the traditionalists, there's, a little sour on Kelsey giving hearts and kisses, blowing kisses to Taylor Swift up in the right. Yeah, I don't know what that's all about. So, but to your point, you gotta, all they do is win, and you gotta respect that. So I do respect it. And they just come up and make plays. They find a way. I became a big Andy Reid fan in that game because, boy, did they highlight Kelsey in that game. I think at one point he was 11 catches for 11 catches. And, he's just, I don't know. He's a former quarterback out of high school. So you talk about chemistry between those two. I think there's better chemistry between Mahomes and Kelsey than there is between Kelsey and Taylor Swift. Yeah. So, and they just got out ahead of Baltimore. And again, Baltimore couldn't, even when it looked like they were going to score. They turned the ball over, got the touchback, and the personal fouls. That defense though did wake up and gave their offense a chance in the second half to win that game, but the offense. I put that on the offense, that they were not able. I mean, what they end up with 7 points in that game? I mean, you just can't.
Yeah. I think the final score was
you just 21. You can't expect to win. Okay, 14. You just can't expect. Through most of that game they had 7 points. You just can't expect to beat Kansas City with 14 points. I'm sorry.
No.
What do you think about?
I agree with
I
you,
mean,
man. You pretty much, you know, said exactly what I was feeling throughout the course of that game. And I don't think Kansas City is a very poised team. They really are. They got some young, they do a good job sprinkling rookies into their lineup along with some veterans and, some no-name guys that come up and make plays. Uh, I'm a fan of Andy Reid's. I love his demeanor after the game. It's just like a walk in the park. As he walks off the field, jubilation, no. Excitement, no. He's been there before. He's done this, and he sees the big picture that's going to happen in 10 days, 11 days from now in Super Bowl 58. And I like the fact that, some of these guys rose up to the occasion, right? The
right.
durability of Patrick Mahomes is incredible. He's been in the league. He's been starting for 6 games. He's been to the AFC Championship 6 times. This is his 4th trip to the Super Bowl. He's 28 years old, 29 years old. And I know we always talk about the quarterback and we sensationalize that position and everything, but he makes people around him a lot better. And to your point with that Travis Kelce, he was targeted 10 times in the first half, 10 receptions. He had 1 reception in the second half. So they kind of got away from that game plan, but they were in full control of that game from start to finish with that opening drive that went 7.5 minutes. Pretty impressive,
Yeah,
Frank.
Andy Reid, right? Andy Reid outcoached him. Mahomes outplayed Lamar. The secondary, they win it. They win the secondary. They with that scheme, Spagnuolo outcoached the Ravens coordinator. Gave him looks at Lamar. The defensive line outplayed Ravens offensive line. They pressured him, sacked him. Coverage was where it needed to be. Yeah, they just played, and I'm really surprised how well Kansas City played in that environment on the road. My hat's off to them, and I just think Baltimore completely laid an egg in that game. So looking to the Super Bowl, what are your thoughts between the Niners and Kansas City?
It'll be very entertaining, like every Super Bowl, right? I think the last 2 championships that Kansas City have won came down to a single possession, right? The possession they had against San Francisco, they went up and won that game. And then the possession they had last year, winning that championship game, I think it was, I don't know if it's 31-27 or 31-28, something like that. But,
who do you think's the better? You mentioned, we on the outset, you said the better team won San Francisco, Detroit. San Francisco, Kansas City. Who do you think's the better team?
KC, they're the champions. And I've always believed that if you're the returning champions, you're still the champions until somebody knocks you off. And they've been there. They've been through all this. Some of the San Francisco players, the Nick Bosas and, George Kittles and, even Brock Purdy. Last year he played in the NFC Championship game out in Philadelphia and learned a lot. And I think Shanahan, it'll be interesting to me to see the time of possession. The time of possession that both these teams try to matriculate the ball down the field. That's what I'm looking at, is how these offensive-minded coaches come up with a game plan to out-execute their opponent. But, I'm riding Kansas City right now. It might change, as I study it more. But I just think that, as much as Purdy was pretty good, this past Sunday. He's got to be extra good in the coming Sundays ahead.
Yeah, well, this makes good for a good podcast because I like San Francisco in that game. I know Kansas City's the defending champion. They've got the experience, but I don't think they're the same team they were last year. And I think it's I think both teams have showed some inconsistency. We saw San Francisco come to Cleveland and get beat by
a missed field goal. Yeah, by a missed field goal, right? Yeah, you know, as we break it down, as most
So
people will be breaking this down, Frank, I think, you know, I look forward to next Tuesday when we're going to continue this podcast and, you know, break it down even a little bit finer because we do it better than anyone else because we're from the locker room and into your media room on the alumnimedia.com. You can find that any of your listening devices. This is Mike Tomczak along with Frank Stamps. You're in the dog pound, raw and unfiltered. And that's interesting because I'm going to go with KC until we talk next Tuesday. And you're going to ride that San Francisco wave until we talk next Tuesday. And what a beautiful setting, huh? Las Vegas, Nevada. You ever been to Las Vegas, Frank? Any stories that you could?
few times. I have, but I haven't been. You know, my back in this event. Yeah, it's a great time. I suggest everybody should go to Las Vegas once in their life. But Mike, appreciate your time.
I'm glad
been a great podcast.
Yeah, I'm glad you're breaking up there because I know our listeners were putting their ear to the speaker to hear some of that muffling that got censored out. Thanks to Ben, our producer, back there in the Chicagoland area, making sure not all the secrets get out. But so tune in next week. We'll bring you some more inside, outside, and in between facts, fictions, and some raw and unfiltered material in the dog pound. This is Mike Tomczak along with Frank Stantz. Thanks for your time. Be safe going home. I tell you what, clean up that water. I got a lot of towels, Frank. I got a lot of towels. I got some shop vacs. You know, I'm in an industrial maintenance business, so I can help you out in any arena if you need help there.
Our brother.
Please call on me.
You know where I live. Peace
I do.
out.
All right, bud. Bye-bye.
All right. Bye.